Joining me now to provide some insight into the trial of Officer Cesar Goodson is attorney Warren Alperstein. Warren is not connected to this case in any way, but has been providing legal analysis for us for some time, and we appreciate that. Warren, always a pleasure to have you on.
Good to be with you again.
So closing arguments were heard today in the trial of Officer Cesar Goodson. What was your analysis of the closing arguments on behalf of the state and then the defense for Officer Goodson?
Well, the state went through methodically how it believes that it met its burden as it relates to all the elements to these charges. The defense, on the other hand, really went after the state's theory, the state's failure to prove this rough ride that it committed to in the opening arguments, the state's failure to prove that Officer Goodson violated any duty to seek emergency medical treatment for Freddie Gray.
Right. So you're questioning, from your observation, whether the state met the burden of proof that Officer Goodson was guilty of the charges against him.
Yeah, I sat through the trial, and even before closing arguments, before Judge Williams started offering his opinions to certain things, I felt that the state had some difficulties, proving any of these charges beyond a reasonable doubt. Judge Williams, like we saw in the Nero case, during closing argument, really went after the state, really took the state to task this afternoon, in questioning why the state didn't prove the rough ride, where the rough ride was that it promised it would prove, and also how the state believes Freddie Gray was exhibiting these outward signs that it needs, that Freddie Gray was in need of medical attention.
It would be a mistake for someone to assume because a defendant has elected a bench trial that this is an easier process than a jury of 12 people. It is not. Is that correct?
No, certainly not. In a court trial or bench trial where it's just a judge making the decision, you're putting all your eggs in one basket. And so that's a big risk, obviously. On the other hand, if it's a jury trial, all 12 members of that jury have to unanimously find you guilty.
Judge Williams has said that he plans to hand down his ruling on Thursday. What's the process for doing that typically?
There's more evidence in this case than we saw in the other cases thus far. And the charges are more serious in Officer Goodson's case. So I think he just wants to take his time as well.
And quickly, lastly, William Porter, we found a mistrial there. Edward Nero found not guilty, and now there are questions whether or not Cesar Goodson will be convicted here. We don't know. We'll have to find out. If this case does not come down to a conviction, where does the state move in terms of the prosecution of the other officers, in your opinion, quickly, Warren?
Well, I think the state's going to be in big trouble. Simply, Officer Goodson is the big fish. He's been anointed as such, and if he's acquitted, I think it's going to be devastating for the state.
Okay. All right, Warren Alperstein, always appreciate your analysis.
My pleasure.
Your time. Thank you very much.
You bet.